Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, November 6th, 2014. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Juila Herz from the Brewers Association will join us to talk about the free craftbeer.com beer and food course that she has co-authored with Chef Adam Dulye. Julia will give us some guidelines on pairing beer and food and some tips on aging and cellaring beers and when not to. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a show page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. We're on the Google Plus, too. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Home Brewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app as well. We're on the BlackBerry Podcast Directory, and we're on the Stitcher app, too. Check out our Brewer's Logbook at basicbrewingshop.com. In the front is a blank calendar that you can use to track your fermentations and plan your brews, and there is room in the back to log the details of up to 50 batches of beer. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support. Thanks to everybody who's done so already. Protect your precious beer with one of our growler bags. Check those out at basicbrewingshop.com. And for a limited time, you can get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with the purchase of any of our DVD combos. We have a sponsor this week. Looking for the perfect holiday gift idea? Search no further. An American Homebrewers Association gift membership is the perfect stocking stuffer for homebrewers and craft beer enthusiasts. Purchase an AHA gift card before December 12th, 2014, and receive a free gift. Choose from the following Brewers publication titles: IPA by Mitch Steele, Designing Great Beers by Ray Daniels, and Radical Brewing by Randy Mosher. Visit homebrewersassociation.org/give and give the gift of beer. That's homebrewersassociation.org/give. And all three of those fine authors have been on this very program, by the way. The holidays are coming up, and I'm looking at designing a very special holiday combo of our stuff soon, so stay tuned for that. Let's take a quick look into the mailbag. Jonathan from Newcastle, Pennsylvania writes, I just started trying to reuse my yeast and culture it, so I was planning to pull the yeast out of storage, my fridge, where it sat for a few weeks, and make a yeast starter. That's when I got the idea. Rather than just making a starter, why not take the malt I have lying around in one of those and one kind of hops that I have extra and just make a 1-gallon pale ale as my starter. So I'm going to do that tomorrow so I can get a taste, feel, smell of one kind of hops, get a tasty product, and will have gotten my yeast multiplied and ready for my 5-gallon brew. Well, there you go, Jonathan. That's good thinking. And one of the good reasons to do small batch brewing. You get to experiment with the hop flavor and aroma of that one hop variety, and you get to build up some yeast at the same time. Now, one guideline that you should probably look at is not making that starter beer too high in gravity, because you probably don't want to stress out the yeast before going into the bigger volume. But good idea. Let us know how that turns out. Now let's talk to Juila Herz about the new free craftbeer.com beer and food course and get some tips on pairing beer and food and cellaring and aging craft beer and homebrew, of course. Juila Herz, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
I think we were talking, we can't remember whether you've officially been on the show or not.
Well, I'm a big fan regardless.
Oh,
can't
shucks.
remember either. I'm sorry.
And what is your official capacity with the Brewers Association?
So I'm the craft beer program director. I'm also one of the spokespersons as well as the publisher for craftbeer.com.
And you have come up, you've partnered with a chef and expert in food to craft a beer and food course. So what was the background? How did this come about and why?
Yeah, we're very excited about this new content venture that's free to access for all that might want it. Chef Adam Dulye, who's a Culinary Institute of America New York graduate and a beery chef, and we need more of those out there, has been a great friend to the Brewers Association and to craft brewers, and we've been working with him for years, and this is an expanded capacity where he and I were just powwowing of like, look, what can we do to really help put beer content, information, curriculum, the mindset to teach it more at culinary institutions. How do we put that more on the map? And I think what we came down to is that a lot of the information for how to pair and how to approach beer, if you're a food world person, but also from the beer world, it's piecemeal. And so we said, let's just tackle it with a 1-week course and see where we can get some traction. And we're already having several schools that have beer programs and or not talking to us from it. And in 2015, there'll be more to come because this course has just had great response out of the gates for sure.
But in addition to educational institutions, I would imagine that that restaurants who want to learn more about beer and food interacting, or who want to teach their servers, this would apply to them as well. And also our listeners, homebrewers out there who want to maybe bring even their family and friends into the beer culture in kind of a more formal way, that this is a really good, well-structured course material to kind of help them do that as well.
Absolutely, and I felt strongly from the get-go, even though we had a major target audience and wrote it with culinary educators in mind, I wanted, no matter what, to make it available to the beer community as well. That includes homebrewers, retailers, anyone in beverage and hospitality, for sure. So that's kind of where we're at, and now that it's available, that's who we're seeing really grab onto it. In less than 30 days, we've had more than 1,200 downloads of the course, and that to me is, you don't take that for granted when you got a 60-plus page document that's there for the taking, but pretty intensive. Mm-hmm. And so with that, it not all the beery-minded folks out there are going to be into that advanced education. I would definitely put homebrewers, me being one of them, in the group that would and should. So we're very pleased with what we're seeing, and we want the beer community to embrace the content and use it as they see fit as well.
Now, you are a certified Cicerone, and we've had Ray Daniels on the show talking about the Cicerone program. How does this differ from the Cicerone program?
Well, the Cicerone program, which I'm full convert and definitely a student, I've tested at the master level and yet to nip that one, but will one day, was a lot of some of my beer approach, and the portions of the craftbeer.com beer and food course that I personally authored was more the beer-centric side, Chef Adam with some of the food side, and then we kind of both combined efforts on the pairing content. But where I think Cicerone philosophy and approach to beer and what Cicerone wants people to know about beer is evident in what Cicerone teaches. This is true to that as well. And you see pretty much the mentality that Cicerone promotes of how to care for beer and present beer, which also ties back to the Brewers Association efforts of draft beer quality and our draft beer quality manual and all that. So the philosophy for the Cicerone program is throughout this, and you can completely tell that I'm a student of the program if you're reading it closely enough.
But this shouldn't be seen as a substitute for the Cicerone program.
Absolutely not. It'd be a supplement. Anyone studying for certified level, I'm teaching a course for 22 people right now inside the BA for certified Cicerone. We're literally in the middle of the course right now for staff, and one of the resources I provided them was this free course. It is some of the basics on the mentality of what you want to get to be able to pass that test. That test is not one size fits all for resources to help you pass it. To pass the certified Cicerone second level, you need to have beer experience and beer reading and beer practice from multitude of brands, multitude of styles, and multitude of books and internet resources. So I'd love to see this as one of them that's included in people's Cicerone studies for sure.
But I like to tell a story. A few years ago, my wife and I went out to dinner at a fairly fancy restaurant here in Northwest Arkansas for our anniversary, and we sat down at the table, and the waiter came to the table, and my wife Susan said, "I think I'll have some wine, this evening with the meal." And the waiter said, "Well, what kind of wine do you want?" And she said, "Well, I don't know much about wine." And so he lit up and went into, "Well, what are you going to have for dinner?" And went through this whole process of helping her to select a wine. And he turned to me and I said, "What do you got for beers?" And he said, "Oh, we got everything." And so
yeah, I've seen that at tableside too, and it's frustrating.
But it's got to be getting better over time, right?
I think so. I really do. It's a great time to be a part of the beer renaissance. U.S. is now the number one beer destination. That necessarily wasn't the case 10 years ago. We really only 10 years ago had, a few craft brewers or microbreweries, some, great specialty imports, but albeit imported, and then the mass domestics. Today we've got 3,100 breweries, with 99% of them being small and independent craft brewers. So, 1,300 of the 3,100 breweries are brew pubs. Real localized drive for a lot of breweries, nano breweries down the street as well. So you've got such an eclectic mix of kind of the localization of beer and the globalization of beer going on in the U.S. And I do feel that in my role here, in the last 8 years, I've definitely seen advancement. But one thing we came out of the gates to explain when we published this beer and food course in October, and we announced it at the Great American Beer Festival Media Luncheon, is that, it's kind of overdue for food world educators to not just embrace beer because they're drinking it, they're enjoying it, they're talking about it, but own it, know how to teach it. And I am after even just more than this progress that we're seeing, but an equalization of beer education compared to wine. And if you go to the food world educators, it's expected. They know wine inside and out, and many of them have been in the sommelier program or have sommeliers teaching their portions of the class, and wine is taught to the student body at large, whereas beer, if it's on the curriculum at all, is maybe just a class. So what we want to see is an equalization of beer education compared to wine, especially based on the interest of beer in this country, with beer being $100 billion in sales, that's with a B, and wine being $36 billion. So what we're really fighting, I think, is tradition and history for where wine sits at tableside, number one, and in the food world's mind, and two, just a need for the food world to be given more resources that are more accessible to help them embrace and really own educating others on beer as well.
So let's take a look at the curriculum. It's a 4-day instruction, and on day 5 they have a written exam. Day 1 is kind of more background, a history of beer, the rise of craft brewers, the brewing process, ingredients in beer, overview of beer styles, who classifies beer styles and home brewing and craft brewing. So, our listening audience would probably be, pretty good at that kind of stuff.
Right. Yep.
Day 2, identifying flavor profiles of beer, how to present and pour beer. And then intro to styles, tasting number 1. So it's interactive, this course. You encourage the actual tasting as you go along. And then day 3, identifying beyond beer flavor profiles, which is interesting. What does that mean?
Well, first of all, what we've got in the course is 25 of the U.S. World Beer styles. Because it is overwhelming. If you look at BJCP, and as many of your listeners know, they're getting ready to go from their 2008 style guidelines to 2014, which are available on their website now to view, but not in motion yet. And Cicerone program, by the way, follows BJCP, so that's another thing to pay attention to. We broke things down to 25 beer styles, but yet the way we as beer lovers look at things, if we know the style guidelines from either the Brewers Association for judging and the BJCP for home brewers, we're now taking things to a further level. Craftbeer.com, the website that this course is published through, really focuses on what the U.S. brewers are making. And we've got 78 beer styles listed on the website, and that was even overwhelming to put into the course. So 25 beer styles are what we list, and then the section you're asking about really addresses is how, if you don't know beer from Adam, do you really wrap your brain around the groupings? And, you can start to look at how many style families are in the BA, and we list it by geography, or style families for BJCP, at least the old way, was more just grouping like styles together. So we've got it where there's 6 areas: crisp and clean, hoppy and bitter, malty and sweet, roasty and rich, fruity and spicy, sour, tart, and funky. And then from there, we educate in the content and take, say, the restaurant server or the culinary student sitting in class through what those categories mean and what styles might weave of the 25 styles that we list into those groupings. So at least if you work your way through this section and really own the material, you'll have a mastery of 6 major groupings for flavor-based styles. It's progressive like I've never seen, and it feels right to present it in this manner, because a lot of people in the beer world aren't just judging or homebrewing. They're into beer because of flavor. So this is where we approach it in this document this way.
And it's not getting any easier over time because of the hybridization between styles. And then, some breweries like, for instance, Crooked Stave, you can't really call their beers, you can't classify their beers into styles. They're just what they are. So
right. And I love to remind people, what is a beer style is one of the sections in this course. And I feel like this is some of the most robust information I've seen out there on what is a beer style, and I'm very proud of the way we present it. But we also emphasize that all brewers do not, literally we have a section, do all craft brewers brew their beers to style? We address it. And so, no, we're not saying craft brewers do, but we do say why beer style guidelines exist and that they provide us a methodology to communicate with each other what we might perceive based on general flavor guidelines and quantitative numbers tied to that style. So there's very progressive things in this course, in that we also address beer styles A to Z. Which is finally, as a little student of the beer style guidelines myself, the way I memorized how to express all the potentials for flavor in a beer style. And I just so am excited to present this. It is on page 13 of this course is beer styles A to Z, and it goes through alcohol and the aroma and the flavor, and then brewing and conditioning process is the B trigger and how that might influence the flavor. Then you get to C, and you've got color, clarity, color, foam, and carbonation. Then you work your way to other things such as hops for H and M for malt, and the triggers are that hops show up not just in bitterness but aroma and flavor. And so reminding people there's 3 places that hops show up, or the malt ranges. And then you've got other ingredients for O, or oxidative qualities and when they are appropriate. You've got palate for P, and then you just kind of tick down astringency and body. You've got water for W, and then yeast, microorganisms, and byproducts of fermentation are your Y, almost to the end of the alphabet. And this is the most robust way that I know how to tell people there is so much potential for flavor in each beer style, and here's a list of triggers if you want to run them down and try and list them yourself.
Yeah, the beer is incredibly complex, which makes it an interesting task to pair craft beer with food, which is what you end up day 3 with. And then day 4 starts with craft beer and cheese. And then you talk about celery and aging craft beer, and then designing a beer dinner. So, you can see if you're a home brewer or a craft beer lover at home, that all those are excellent skills, in designing parties and dinners for your own friends and family. So let's scratch the surface here. And when we're thinking about pairing beer with food, where do you start?
One of the pull quotes in the course that we list next to a great chart called Potential Interactions is, and it sets the tone, I think, for this section of the course, is think of paired craft beer as a supporting ingredient and consider how it will interact with different characteristics of the dish. So in other words, beer is just not a beverage on the side. Anytime you're pairing, whether you're drinking milk and cookies, wine with your spaghetti and meatballs, or, an American brown ale with that same spaghetti and meatballs, where does the beer fit as an ingredient in the overall experience? And so I think that's the tone that we're trying to set and really get people's brains to wrap around. It's important to note that, pairing is personal, and that's tied to the concept to me of perception is personal. I'm never going to tell you how to make a home run pairing that you are absolutely guaranteed going to say it's a home run, because you know what? It might not work for you. But when we all dial into explaining what we're getting and dissect the major elements within each food dish and beer, and then talk about what interactions we're noticing, sometimes that can definitely bring us closer to understanding what the other person is perceiving. And if I'm saying I'm getting a home run pairing and I describe it to you properly and really walk you through it on what interactions I'm getting, where the taste elements of sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami, and how they're interacting in the beer and the food, and then what aromatic elements I'm getting and both beer and food and how they're interacting, and then on the sensation side of carbonation and temperature, or on the food side, capsaicin, heat, or ginger, how that's all interplaying, I might just work your mind into unlocking a key of mental recognition of like, oh my gosh, I totally get it. So this is all, scratching the surface, as you said, because there's no way you can teach that in a couple of pages, but if you can just at least have a few nuggets of ideas of how to approach it, and this is how we approach it, then we might be closer at the end of the day on understanding each other and what we're each perceiving.
So there are sort of the three C's of pairing that you go into that would kind of give us a starting point of how to think about beer pairings. You've got complement, and you've got contrast, and you've got cut. What do those mean?
Well, a lot of people that are listening might have already heard, tied to, and I remember the first time I heard it was Jim Cook from Sam Adams talked about complement, contrast, and cut. Before I answer what those are, I think that this is such a uncharted territory. Frankly, wine has not nailed pairing, but they've gone very far to help us understand some things. Say wine's acidity. That's one of the main reasons that wine is so used in food pairing, because acidity will cut through fat. So that's a great example of what cut is. And it will also cut salt. And then you can taste the other flavors that exist. So that's a great example. But we're taking things to a level today where we're acknowledging the lexicon's not exactly there in a uniform fashion. So through publishing this course and the Brewers Association work, as well as the Cicerone program and American Society of Brewing Chemists, these three organizations now are working together to try to standardize some lexicon on beer and food pairing. So if I explain to you, at least in the course, we put it in writing, our perception of what complement means and what contrast means. Complement usually means echoes and harmonies of flavors, and contrast to me is really tied to the taste elements, sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami, and those interactions instead of more contrast of flavor. Anyway, I want to acknowledge that this is cutting-edge work that continues, and we want to get more standardization. So somebody that downloads this course from craftbeer.com that gets this language going and starts to use it and wear it, that I applaud, and they might even see this evolve further in the next 2 years as the work goes on to try and get a little bit more science to back what it means when a beer lover says this is contrasting, or what a beer lover means when this is cutting. So we're working on standardization, and this little summary document right here on page 45 really just addresses where we are today in the beer world and give it 3 to 5 years, and we're going to be probably leading wine if we keep working on this, on how to explain chemically and also, scientifically what's actually happening when we pair.
One example of contrasting and cutting that I can think of, if I can use my wife as an example again, she doesn't like sour beers. So La Folie, which is one of my favorite beers, she doesn't like at all. And so Steve Wilkes, our buddy Steve Wilkes, had a beer dinner at his house, and he served La Folie with a kind of a summer sausage. And with that pairing, my wife actually liked the beer because it contrasted, the sourness contrasted with the meaty, fatty summer sausage, and then the sourness also cut the fat on the tongue, so it kind of balanced out the whole thing. So that's a 1 and 1 equals 3 kind of interaction.
Yeah, 1 + 1 = 3 or 5 is even the goal, and I love it. And then on top of that, you probably had some flavor complements from the brown malt flavors in that sausage, the brown flavors in that sausage from cooking preparation and the protein. And then on the flip side, the complement of it finding its way to what was in that Munich or Vienna malt that was likely used in that Flanders style beer. So yeah, great example.
And you have the flavor triangle here on a page where you combine taste elements with sensations and aroma elements, not elephants, but although there are probably some beers out there that have elephant elements. But all that comes together. And you've also got to think about, I guess, when you're designing a beer dinner, that there may be even an environmental or an emotional component as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of how we perceive flavor is tied to our experience and genetics. So it is a lot to wrap your brain around, but I've said often, photography, if you're the Photography Association, you better understand how people see. You shouldn't just talk about what they're seeing, but how they see. And this is what we're starting to do with food and beer and flavor on the association side, from looking at the flavor potentials in beer. And this flavor triangle on page 44 it's my work through and through, where it used to be a square. And I have been presenting this document since the Craft Brewers Conference, where I presented with Gwen Conley of Lost Abbey, and we did a pairing palate trip seminar. And before that, square was, vetted best I could, published in New Brewer, and now it's evolved to this triangle because I worked with a doctor of genetics to get it refined, and I'm very pleased with that because, again, back to we need the beer world to have a little more science backing on how we talk about beer and food, I think, and flavor. And so the Doctor of Genetics, Dr. Nicole Garneau from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, took my magic square that I called it and helped me create this and refine it to this very tidy triangle. And I think when people see this, when they look at the triangle of on one corner is taste elements, sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami, and then another corner is the aroma elements, everything you can maybe get from kilned and roasted malt, your melanoidins, fruit, flavors, hops and essential oils, herbs and spices, anything that's aromatic and volatile. And then on the other triangle corner is sensations, as I mentioned. If you look at all that, your brain starts to discern what you really have potential to taste. And then her spin on it is tying into experiences, hedonics. And that's kind of a complicated, not sexy marketing term for likability. And there's two parts to hedonics when we taste. One is your flavor characteristic scale of how you're tasting something, and that's tied to intensity. How strong or weak is something that we're tasting? And then the other side of hedonics is your likability. I like it extremely much, or I dislike it extremely, and then the ranges in between. So this is a great roadmap to me, the flavor triangle from craftbeer.com, on how to approach or think about all the potential flavors in beer.
So let me throw you a wild card here. Mm-hmm. What if we have spicy grilled salmon tacos with a flour tortilla? What comes to your mind there? What components do you look at in the food to start thinking about what components in the beer that you want?
Right. And so first of all, you said spicy, which means capsaicin heat. One thing that I will, depending on how hot it is, alcohol causes your tongue, it's like a solvent on your tongue. So your tongue, almost like the pores open up, think of it, on your tongue. So you're more susceptible when you have things with higher alcohol. Wine, the average wine is 13%. Liquor, spirits has even higher. And the average craft beer style, 6%, give or take, depending on which style you're putting in place of at least the 80 styles that we review. So I'm going to look for something, if it's spicy, right out of the gates with capsaicin heat, that's lower in alcohol. So I'm going to steer clear of spirits and wine and move towards beer. Then I'm also going to want to know what sauces are on these tacos. Is there an umami element with some kind of spicy mayonnaise, or is it San Diego fish style tacos, which always has a gorgeous, rich type of mayonnaise sauce on top. So if I've got umami to match, I do have to not go so low on the alcohol spectrum for beer style that I don't have any body and weight to the beer. So I'm thinking that this fish taco style presentation, and I feel like Lynn Rosetta Casper on Splendid Table all of a sudden, I would want to go towards a medium level weight beer for body and alcohol. So I'm thinking 6-7%. And then from there, now that I've discerned two very key things, I'm going to start to look at flavors in the food and then back my way into trying to find echoes and flavor hooks in the beer style. So you mentioned flour tortilla. That's going to be more towards the wheat beer notes. Pilsner style flavors would match more closely flour tortillas instead of maybe a fried corn tortilla. So I got to keep that in mind. And then, you talked about the salmon. Salmon, a lot of seafoods can clash with higher hopped beers, so you don't want to go maybe towards, I've got a few beer styles that I'm working my brain to, but, an Imperial Imperial IPA would be too high in alcohol and I think too high in bitterness. There could be some clashes. You can literally have metallic clashing with seafood if you are not careful. So I'm going to want to back that off. So I'm thinking, just cutting to the chase now, not trying to be long-winded, an American strong ale would probably be great with that. It's going to have enough weight and body and alcohol to match the intensity of the salmon, which has fat, and the richness of whatever sauce is on top, and yet not clash too much in bitterness against that seafood. And, that's what I'm going with.
Oh, very nice. I like your thought process. That was great.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention the malt flavors and hop flavors finding its way to what are herbs and spices or, advanced brown flavors are on that salmon. Maybe it was grilled. So you can go from there in so many different ways to try and justify it. And then the only real way to know if you've got a good pairing is to taste it. And that's what it's all about is finding your way to a great pairing is the tasting and really trying it out.
And while I got you on the line, I want to talk to you about another section that I get questions a lot, and that is cellaring and aging. And that can be either a good thing or a bad thing, and that depends on storage conditions and the beers, right?
Yeah, it definitely can. And we tackle that topic in the craftbeer.com beer and food course as well. Also, a lot of the resources used within the course are downloadable just as standalone documents, which is kind of cool. And one of them ties into what you're talking about, our little beer style aging times spreadsheet. And so it's very simple and not intensive to the 25 styles that we list, but we get general. We talk about guidelines from Belgian style doubles. 6 months to 3 years, and strong ales below 8% would be 1 to 6 years, strong ales above 8%, 2 to 15 years. And certainly when you create a chart like this, this is not laboratory tested. This is definitely anecdotal based on both mine and Adam's experience. Chef Adam is a retailer. He owns Monk's Kettle, or he's part owner of Monk's Kettle and Abbott Cellar in San Francisco, and he really, he's laying down beers that they would sell. So he's paying attention to these times. And we as all homebrewers know, when we're cellaring, we want to lay them down, and then we don't even, address temperature on this as well. So that's something eventually to work into it. But don't be afraid to lay down beers. And this is a little cheat sheet. And then my advice is also don't be afraid to dive in and taste them. And no time like the present to really see how that aging is going, because sometimes beers, obviously, many of us have discovered, will go past their prime. Mm-hmm. So it's always good to test.
And that may be a matter of personal preference because, for example, a lot of people like to lay down Sierra Nevada's Bigfoot. I like it fresh. And, I kept some for a few years and tasted it, and it just didn't taste good to me, But a lot of people like that aged characteristic of that beer. So, that may enter into it as well. But how do you know, what do you look for, what are the good characteristics that you get out of a beer that's been cellared correctly for the proper amount of time? And then how do you know when it's gone past, or how do you know when it's not a good thing?
I think it's a great question, because craft brewers today in the U.S., and again, this is centric to what the content in the course is on, they are tying a lot of their beers to freshness. And then other ones, like American Brett style, they're tying that to cellaring. I mean, many of us know it takes over a year for, Brettanomyces character to really start to develop. And so you don't want to drink that before it's ready, even though brewers are selling it potentially before it's had its full chance to develop. So, again, how do you tell? It's based on an awareness of what you want to pay attention to perceiving. And on the freshness side of things, if you're drinking India Pale Ale, the number one selling craft beer style, I'm going to err on the side of fresh. The sooner to taste it, the better. I was just reading one beer blogger talking last night about how Lagunitas sent them their new Session IPA, which they want to have tasted as soon as possible. So the way Lagunitas approached this beer blogger was, hey, we want to send you this sample. Where are you going to be tomorrow so we can ship it directly to that address, and we want you to drink it right away. So they really out of the gates were like, look, if we're sending samples, we want to set the tone and set the stage for the best chance to sample. So you're looking for freshness of flavors in hops and aromatic. Those herbal notes, those forest notes from American hops, pine, juniper, spicy, getting to sage, and then, the citrus notes of orange citrus, lemon citrus. You want those to smack you in the face if you're drinking a fresh IPA. And then on the flip side, the development of the oxidative qualities is not off flavors. It certainly can go past that. But what I'm personally paying attention to is the development of the sherry notes, and I do like, some black currant, which has been called caddy. It just depends. It's also personal preference or genetically what you're predisposed to perceiving. But I like a little oxidative qualities and advancement of some of my beers that are higher in alcohol, above 8%, and that's key.
And again, personal preference. I mean, if you'll know it when you
right.
And unfortunately, once it's gone. You can't go back. So
yeah, you'll know it. What is fresh? I mean, there's no definition for what I can tell you is fresh. You'll know it, though, if it tastes a little lifeless and lack of complexity and flavor, and some of the bitterness is diminished, like you're mentioning, with Sierra Nevada Bigfoot, and you should be able to tell, like, I wonder what used to maybe be there. And that's often when you've been, unfortunately, maybe served at a restaurant a beer that was past its prime, that back to the retailer should have been educated enough through their beverage buyer and lead beverage director to know, we lay things down, we present them when they're ready, and if you're going to not have a strategy for vintage beers, then don't have a vintage beer list. That's one, I think, key thing that I'd like to see improve at retail.
So what's the optimum temperature that you recommend for storing beers over long periods of time?
It is cellar temperatures in some schools of thought. Refrigerator temperatures is personally my school of thought. Beer is perishable. We need to look at it like milk. It can advance quickly, and I think the colder it's stored, albeit not freezing, the better if you're going to want to have it hang around. And that's back to what's going on at retail on the shelf. You've got so many beers in the marketplace today, and Skew-mageddon gets brought up, like, are there too many beers? And I always totally dismiss that. I'm like, nope, there's not too many beers. We beer lovers want selection and choice. We just want our retailers to know how to present it, and that means get more cold storage space. If you look at the footprint of so many of today's liquor stores, there's so much wine, and there's an advantage there because wine with sulfites, which is also an allergen and a challenge for some people, is stabilized, and it can be stored room temp unless it's meant to, I guess, be served cold. Beer should be, unless it's tunnel or flash pasteurized, really served or stored cold. And so we need to see retail evolving. If they're going to get in the beer game and want to be a retail destination for beer, then they should think about their footprint and how much cold storage space and walk-in coolers they actually devote to beer. And the more, the better chance for those beers to last longer.
Amen, sister. It's a good thing to walk into a liquor store and see good beers. It's not such a good thing to see those good beers out on the floor, when there are other beers that I shall not name that are in the cooler. But it's changing. Even in Northwest Arkansas, there are more liquor stores up here building in more refrigerator space or putting the better beers in the colder places. So, things are changing for the better. So.
Absolutely. Miller Coors did great research that they presented, the 300-day rule, and I'll just share it real quick with your listeners so everybody has perspective. The same beer stored at 3 days in the trunk of your car at 90 degrees on a summer day, so don't do that, but that's one scenario, would have the same advancement as a beer stored at room temperature for 30 days at 72 degrees as the same beer at 300 days stored in the refrigerator at 38 degrees. So you literally get a 300-day gain by storing at temperature, cooler temperatures, cold temperatures, based on their research. The advancement of heat will be the enemy, and so I think that's the key, is really understanding where the research lies and then paying attention to cold storage when you're able to pull it off.
There you go. How can people access the guide?
So the craftbeer.com beer and food course is downloadable, as I said, for free at craftbeer.com/culinary. So easy enough, and hopefully people are interested and download the file, take a look, give us feedback, and happy beer journey to all of us, because it's like all of our tasting journeys are a work in progress, just like we as people are works in progress, and so is this course, and I'm just happy to have it published and out there.
And it's free.
And it's free. Yep. You gotta love that.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate your coming on officially, whether you have or not.
Right, we don't know, but thanks for the interest. Let's do it again in a few years.
Thanks, Julia.
All right, James, you take care.
Well, thanks again to Julia. It is a very well done course, and because it's also free, you can't go wrong, right? So head on over to the website and check that out. And I swear Julia has been on the show at some time in the past. Probably just a quick interview at GABF or something. But I just know that she's been on the show. She's a great advocate for craft beer and has always been helpful whenever I have a question or need help in setting up an interview for the show or whatever. So I'm glad that we were able to chat officially. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. Please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You'll find our bottle openers on our shop. Our Basic Brewing growler bags are available. Protect your precious homebrewed craft beers. You take it from place to place. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time, with a free bottle opener included for a limited time, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store too. Our Brewers logbooks are on the store as well. Keep track of up to 50 batches of beer. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Jerry Thomas's Bartender's Guide, How to Mix Drinks, 1862 reprint, a Bon Vivant's Companion. Very interesting. And Nutiva Organic Shelled Hemp Seed, 3-pound bag. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com as well. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.